Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. You can find me on X and Twitter at Force Total. And today we have a guest on, Mike Jarmuz, aka Muzz, who is the founder of Lightning Ventures and Thunder Funder. We're going to get into what that is, but first, I just want you to tell everybody a little bit about your history when it comes to Bitcoin. How did you get into Bitcoin, and what is it about Bitcoin that is interesting to you?
Hey, Bitcoin, not crypto. So I got into Bitcoin somewhere around that 2013 area. I still have a valid Mount Gox claim all these years later. They should give you something for that, a consolation prize. Used things like Charlie Shrem's Bit Instant back in the day, which actually worked wonderfully. Actually, I'm pretty convinced it would be a unicorn had it, continued, been allowed to operate. So I was living in New York at the time, and I had a bar on the Lower East Side, and around the time that I discovered Bitcoin, and had one of the first ATMs in Manhattan, actually the second Bitcoin ATM. In Manhattan there, and it was a homemade unit that's of course is pre bit license and all that stuff. So it was fun. There weren't, and we of course accepted Bitcoin at the bar, which not many people pay in Bitcoin, but occasionally it did happen. And yeah, and I just once you get into Bitcoin and discover it, I mean, you feel like you've been waiting for something like this your whole life. At least that's how I felt. Just felt like this was the only thing that really mattered. And I wish that I started working in Bitcoin sooner. I wish that I quit everything that I was doing and just really went in full force then. But I was a small business owner. This was before I started angel investing and doing a lot of stuff in that area. So, had a million different businesses at the time. And before that, I was in the music business for probably over 10 years or so. And, had a pretty crazy, interesting life. And now I focus all of my time on Bitcoin and Bitcoin startups mainly.
So you mentioned there that once you found Bitcoin, that it was something that would just really like suited you, and I feel like that's a common theme. It's what we've all been looking for, whether we know it or not. But but can you get a little bit more into just what was it about Bitcoin that was interesting to you when you found it? What purpose did it serve for you, and what kind of vision did you see for it?
Coming out of '08 in the financial crisis, I definitely was in that position where bought a house with, probably that they shouldn't have let me buy really at the time. And, they used to call them ninja loans, which stood for no income, no job, no assets. And they would basically give you a loan. And then, not too much longer after that, they would let you refinance, do a cash out refi on your property, and actually take up to 120% of your equity out in cash. That is the very first BitMEX leverage trading that ever started there, was during that crisis. So after that, I mean, I had a bankruptcy that was discharged in January of 2009, and just coming out of that, and then all of a sudden you start looking at things, right? What happened here? And by the way, I still don't think anyone went to jail. Some of those companies, Wachovia, Countrywide, uh, went to zero and never came back. Some got a bailout. I mean, just everything that happened. And basically you discover gold and silver. You get into metals, and Max Kaiser, the Kaiser report was on back then, and a friend sent me a link, and that movie Zeitgeist had come out, maybe a few years earlier. I can't remember when that came out. But you start really questioning money and getting into hard money and learning. And I don't have the Harvard MBA or the Safedine degrees. And I love those people that do. Dylan LeClaire, all those macro people talking about intraday volatility hedge. That's not really me. But just started going down the rabbit hole of sound money. And at that point in time, Max Kaiser's big campaign. All you ever heard Max Kaiser say was "Crash JP Morgan, buy silver." That was the name of the campaign. Every show was "Crash JP Morgan, buy silver." And so pretty much started stacking metals and learning as much as I could, and also being like a conspiracy theory nutso. You're already listening to Alex Jones, and all of the alternative kind of beliefs, which many of them have proven to be true. People saying that aspartame is bad for you, and high fructose and all these kind of fluoride, start getting rid of, making life changes and things like that. And I came across Bitcoin in some message board on one of these, above top secret or whatever the hell, websites they are with all of these things. And pretty much did what everyone does the first time they discover Bitcoin, and that is dismiss it. This is a scam. This is silly, is pyramid thing. And, you don't really look at it too much. And it was very, very cheap at that point. And it wasn't until years later, maybe around the Thanksgiving ish area, 2012, that late 2012, that it kind of popped up on the radar again. And Max was also talking about it as I discovered him, and it was like, holy crap, that this thing is. Did I miss it? It was $3 the first time. It was like, oh my god, did I miss it? Is it over? Well, I'm not going to buy it for $3 because the thing used to be 10 cents. And I just watched it go up. I watched it go up, and I didn't buy it as it kept going up. And there was this place in New York. It was actually down by Wall Street, had a physical location. It was called the Bitcoin Center. And it was a place where they had like this open outcry sort of pit kind of thing, and had some fun there. And I called him, and Nick Spanos, it was his thing. He's a pretty popular speaker guy and all that. And he answered the phone personally, and he was like, come on down and I will, you can buy some Bitcoin. And still didn't, and kept on watching the price go up until eventually I was just like, you know what, I have to get some. And then, of course, you don't buy as much as you should buy. You buy enough to actually play with it, and download and install Bitcoin Core and have it sync, and get into a console. I wasn't really a programmer. I definitely loved tinkering and playing with computers my whole life. I mean, since the, you know, 14.4 modems and whatever. I'm 42 years old. So definitely love playing with that stuff as it started. I remember when the first Netscape browser was launched with that pulsating blue, N in the corner. That was like a big deal. But next thing you know, you're in a console and you're importing private keys, and you're doing things and playing around with it. So that was it. And then pretty much from that point in time, you know how it goes, right? Then you're obsessed with everything that there is to learn and know. And I mean, that's kind of it. It's over for any of your free time the rest of your life.
Yeah, definitely. Can you go back to maybe putting yourself in that place after you met with that guy who had the Bitcoin space? What held you back from buying then? Why did you wait longer, do you think?
I don't think that it was really like forefront of like how important this is at that moment. It's like there's no time, and you're talking to somebody now, right? Maybe a family member or your mom or whoever, kind of before the Bitcoin ETFs, and maybe they haven't listened to you for the past 10 or more years, and you're like, really, this is kind of like last call. Like, do you want to do something now? I didn't really have that kind of urgency. So it's like, oh, I was in my working career doing what I was doing. It's like, I'll get down there later. I don't need to go right now, And then, a few days go by, and occasionally you're checking your investments and things. Yeah, I take a glance at Bitcoin. There really wasn't too many places you could even watch the price. One was called bitcoinwisdom.com. That was kind of like the only real place that you could really watch a price. And then eventually it's like, okay, I don't fucking care anymore. I'm just going to go buy the thing, and we'll see what it's all about.
If you're interested in getting yourself some Bitcoin, I would recommend taking a look at Bitcoin Well. There's a link in the description, and if you use my referral code, you'll actually get some free Bitcoin. They're the best place, in my opinion, to buy Bitcoin because they're a non custodial exchange, which means they never hold your Bitcoin for you. When you send them money, they'll send you Bitcoin directly to your wallet, and you can buy on chain or Lightning through them. And they have a swap function at a 0% fee, so you can swap in between the two. They also have non-KYC options, and they're available in Canada and the United States. So check them out. Link in the description. That goes to support this show. Thanks, everybody. Yeah, it's sure changed a lot, and yeah, there wasn't that sense of urgency. I kind of feel like, well, I mean, we're kind of in a bull run right now, which might bring that energy in there as well. And just crossed 100,000 for the first time. The ETFs, what MicroStrategy is doing. There seems to be like this, and the SBR potentially on the future, Strategic Bitcoin Reserve of the U.S. It seems like there's a little bit more urgency going on now, and the price is like, I get asked all the time, like, when should I buy? Should I wait for a pullback? Like, should I buy now? And it's really hard to like tell people. Like, I obviously never tell people what to do, but um, it does. To me, it's the same feeling of when it was at 60K or 45K, and I was buying, and I was like, should I be buying right now? Like, is now the right time to buy? It just never feels like it's early enough. It never feels like it's the right time. But then it also feels like it's totally wrong not to own Bitcoin and to just have fiat instead, right? It's kind of a weird feeling. I feel like.
The two main regrets that I have personally is one, not just turning on a DCA from the very beginning and just leaving it, just, and there really wasn't any like DCA kind of tool back then, I mean, but just doing something, making a commitment that every time that I got paid, I was going to just put something in. 5%, 10%, some kind of a buy, and just really stacked methodically and relentlessly, and just didn't pause that. I mean, that is my personal biggest regret right there. And yeah, not your keys, not your coins wasn't really a thing back then. No one was really screaming it. Nobody was really screaming, withdraw your Bitcoin from exchanges, not your keys, not your coins. There wasn't that whole movement. And not taking my own personal Bitcoin security seriously back then was, huge. It took like quite a while for those wounds to heal, where after the Gox and Silk Road and everything else that happened, I just didn't even want to think about Bitcoin. Like, I was just not in a position. I wasn't ready, like right back in the horse, like, let's go buy a bunch of Bitcoin. That was tough to go through. But now it's a whole nother world, right? I got my mom texting me. She's like, "How do I know I'm not going to get rugged from Strike?" I'm like, "Dude, you need to chill." Like, you know what I mean? It's and I got her a hardware wallet for Christmas, so now she's going through that, like, what the hell do I do with these words? And it's fun watching. It's fun watching somebody go through that for the first time, especially like the person who raised you. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a learning curve to it, and yeah, those are two excellent pieces of advice. Coincidentally, it's January 3rd, which is the first day, 16 years ago or whatever, the network was first initiated. And then now it's like a day of taking your coins off of exchanges. It's like an annual kind of thing people try to remind people to do, and yeah, it's interesting to hear that back in those days, because I wasn't involved back then. That it wasn't really something that people were talking about a lot, taking custody of your own private keys. But that's such an important part about Bitcoin, right? It's like that is um, part of the selling feature of Bitcoin is actually being able to basically own the right to transfer this unit of value.
Yeah, and it has to, like, things have to happen for it to be real, to get you. And from then, I mean, the Gox thing, but all of them. I mean, Celsius, BlockFi, which I didn't think those were going to go under. I wasn't screaming they're all Ponzi schemes. I mean, I made a personal investment in BlockFi, you know, and the inside joke is that's what you get for shit coining. No, but uh, you know, that business, like, it could be run right. You know, I mean, you're keeping a spread. I mean, you're lending Bitcoin at X, and you know, and you're borrowing at Y. You just keep the difference. You know, Unchained, it didn't have any problems during that whole issue. But look at what else happened over the years. Okay, so Cripsy, you know, Cripsy was a guy named Big Vern, and he just up and like vanished with everyone's money. You know, so there was that exchange, and then there was BTC-E. That was a big one, like more like European. I think that was like seized by the FBI. One day you just went there, and you know that domain, that FBI was there on the landing page. And man, I can't think of them all right now.
Quadriga X in Canada, the guy faked his own death.
I think they made a movie about that one too. Um, and there's just, you know, so what's going to happen in the future, right? Is there going to be less of this? You know, I'm an optimist, right? I'm not saying leave your Bitcoin on exchanges, but I really hope that these things were a thing of the past, you know, and this whole everything that just happened with these blowups. I hope that it's over.
Yeah, hopefully. And it does seem like the risk, the risk kind of gets taken out of Bitcoin every single day. I think the risk gets taken out every 10 minutes, right? Every new block becomes, more evidence that it's working the way it should. And, FTX and BlockFi and these things blowing up, like that's good. Now they're gone, right? Like those were problems in this industry. So, hopefully we can build some better solutions, which kind of leads me into what you're doing here with investing. First, I'd like to just get into what Lightning Ventures is. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I'm also curious to see one last thing. You know, when you read those terms and services from your River or whatever Bitcoin exchange, it specifically says your funds are not insured in any way. Okay, like specifically. So, you know, if you've got 9 grand in your Bank of America account, you're not really super worried. It's, you know, not your cash, not your cash. You know, nobody's really thinking about making those kind of withdrawals because there's some kind of coverage there, you know. So it'll be really interesting to see how that changes to give a little bit more um, uh, certainty to some people with any amount, right? Not even just the 250 on the FDIC. Um, but anyway, I'm sorry. What was your question?
Oh, I just wanted to hear a little bit about what Lightning Ventures was, because that was that sort of your first big venture into the Bitcoin space, like when you fully kind of committed to it?
Yeah, so I fell in love with angel investing and investing in early stage companies, which I love, not just Bitcoin companies, which I had invested in a few, but just private companies, whether they were late stage, kind of pre IPO things, or they were the early stage, which I didn't do till much later. So I had invested a lot and spent most of my time studying either Bitcoin or investing. And somebody basically kind of suggested, why don't you start your own little shop, right? I was in a bunch of syndicates, and a syndicate is just a group of investors who invest together into a company, and maybe they can add value and do some things. And they said, well, why don't you start one? So that was kind of Lightning Ventures. So I started by raising a small friends and family fund, which charged no fees, no carry, just kind of running it for experience, and then started building up the syndicate, which Lightning Ventures is the world's largest, right, group of Bitcoin focused investors, an investing network. So there's podcasters in there. I'd love to send you an invite after this. And you know, just getting a bunch of really smart, talented, awesome people in the group. It's not really necessarily about how much you're investing, you know, because there are people in our group that end up being advisors for companies or make meaningful connections. Some of our portfolio founders are in there and they see something to get together on a partnership with another company. So there's a lot of other kind of indirect benefits and other things that come by being in a group of Bitcoin focused angel investors or entrepreneurs. So my primary focus is always going to be having the best people in the group, and then the money that people invest kind of comes later, and that's totally cyclical. We're still at a pretty tough time right now as far as raising funds go, and when we launched, it was pretty easy. It was much different than it is now as far as you know zero interest rate environment. Everything was ripping, and it was pretty easy to go out and raise money. So that is completely not the case now. Before, you're a founder and it's all about, you can lose money for 12 to 18 months and you can raise that next round. And as long as there's more money there, there's really not a lot of pressure on you to kind of hit profitability and really show numbers. And now it's completely the opposite, right? Everyone, it's all in defense mode. And when do you think you can hit a cash flow break even, and cutting your burn during these downtimes and really focusing on getting to that number. So yeah, it definitely goes in cycles. So yeah, so started Lightning Ventures, started syndicating deals. I don't know if you have any questions about that, or to explain a little bit of kind of how that works or any of that. But that's what I've been focused on until recently.
How do you find things to invest in? Do you search for people in that space, or how does that kind of come together?
So getting started, I mean, as a Bitcoiner, you know a lot of the companies that are out there. And the first company that I actually helped and worked with was Azteco. Just before I started Lightning Ventures, is actually largely responsible for starting it, and they just kind of encouraged me. So Azteco was thinking, I was a hobbyist user. I had an Azteco account and a terminal, and would give them some feedback and whatever while I was investing. And they were looking to put together their first round. So being able to kind of make some introductions, help them to some people who really kick-started it and got it going for them, that was really the start of what I was doing. So it kind of started with them, and then, hey, we should do this as Lightning Ventures. And in the beginning, getting to know the companies, reaching out, doing calls, um, it was a hot time. So in a hot time, if Forest's Bitcoin startup, we might love it. Okay. And we love you and love this. And like, we're going to queue up an allocation for our syndicate, and let's try and fill 200 or 250,000. And then, 2 weeks later, by the time we're kind of ready to go, you're like, hey guys, the round's fully subscribed, and, I'm not taking any more capital. And then you end up getting kind of shut out of these deals, right? So you have this kind of hot market where it's very competitive. Uh, and then you have the opposite, where nobody's investing in anything, right? So I prefer it right in the middle. I like a nice orderly market where, if Forest is raising 1.6 million, maybe there's 900 or a million committed and in, but there's still plenty of room there for the rest of it. That's really the sweet spot. But we've had both sides of that. And, eventually I think we have like maybe 43 or 44 companies that we've invested in, whether that's through our fund or the syndicate or sometimes both. So there's a lot of portfolio companies there. And I mean, there's a lot of stuff just to do there, right? Trying to be helpful, proactive and reactive. People need things, and checking in and trying to add value, as well as keeping the investors in the loop, right? And seeing what they can do. So that's quite a bit of work there as well. And it's really hard to follow all the new things going on in Bitcoin, right? Some people are just focused on mining, right? We're not really mining people. We wanted to invest in some mining companies like hash rate marketplaces, things like that are very cool. But we're not mining experts here, right? So we have an expert who like looks at mining, right? But some people are just focused on that, and you're keeping up with all these new innovations and forward contracts and all these kind of things. People selling block space from next year, and all these really cool kind of out there ideas that are taking place. And then there's wallets and exchanges and everything else happening around the globe, because it's not like you're just focused in one area. It's not like a Silicon Valley or just I mean, there's just so much going on everywhere. And then there's infrastructure and even things where Bitcoin is finding its way in that's not even where you wouldn't even expect it. There was something like crowd health or, ad tech companies that are leveraging Bitcoin or, yeah, I mean, it's just everywhere. So we do our best right now, and it's still kind of a lukewarm, to put it mildly, market, right? It's not really very hot right now. So there's a lot of companies who would love some checks. But unlike other VCs, we didn't just raise a $50 million fund and are deploying it, right? What we do depends a lot on our network, and it's a lot more work for a lot less money, by the way. But that's kind of what we're doing. And I have a soft spot for the individual angel investor. I know how hard it was for me to get started. The minimums in Lightning Ventures is $1,000. Okay. So if you wake up and you get, Lightning Ventures invites you to invest in XYZ company that you happen to know and love, you can start your angel investing journey in these highly illiquid, speculative uh, instruments for relatively cheaply. So I like that. I like appealing to those type of people because normally, to cut an angel check, oh, it's so much money, and I don't know if I have that kind of money. And I just like showing people that you can get started with very little. So that's kind of the part of the passion for me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, being able to get into that startup investing or like small business kind of stuff, or like early stage, I guess. With only $1,000, that's like yeah, unheard of anywhere else, right? So that kind of opens it up to a lot more people. I'm curious though, like when I got into investing, I invested in all sorts of different stuff, and then once I learned about Bitcoin a little bit more, I started just moving a lot of my allocation over to Bitcoin because of its performance. So how much of like Bitcoin's performance is an indicator of like, should you take on this business to invest in through your angel fund? Like, do you guys consider the actual like percentage gains of Bitcoin itself versus a Bitcoin business?
So yeah, once you become a Bitcoiner and you start, thinking in Bitcoin or speaking in Bitcoin or whatever it is, then you kind of start measuring a lot of your stuff against Bitcoin, right? Whether that's whatever cash on cash return in any portfolio or anything that you do, you start benchmarking it against Bitcoin. So, early stage venture investing, hands down crushes. The people who make money in early stage investing, when it does work, um, is like absurd returns. And I'm not talking about meme coins or Wall Street bet stocks. I'm talking about if you woke up and got a deal that said, Forrest, do you want to invest $1,000 in this new startup called Coinbase? Even at their Series A or sometime around there, or a DoorDash or an Uber or any of these type of things. If your deal flow was dialed up and you had that, and you had an extra $1,000 sitting around, um, I can assure you there aren't many things that would ever return anywhere near that over that time period. So putting it against Bitcoin, it's all about a cycle. So, when we raised, there are people who, if Bitcoin is 20,000, and like, okay, so the company Fold, they're IPOing here soon. Um, so in October 2020, I got the Fold deal. This was long before Lightning Ventures. Well, not that long, I guess, but I was just an angel investor and I loved Fold. and sold one Bitcoin at 10,000 to invest in this deal for Fold. And Bitcoin had a wild ride since then. Okay, it was up to 70, it was back down to 18, it was whatever. And not being able to sell your angel investments most of the time, to me, is a feature and not a bug. Because had I been pressed yeah. Had I been pressed with this decision, like you check your stock portfolio. I mean, I'm not really built for that. Should I buy more, sell less, sell half? You know what I mean? So you're kind of in, and all you can do is really root the company on. And right now, these things change all the time. I think it was in the press release, though, or at least whenever it came out, that Fold's targeting like a $300 million valuation. And I think a lot of that can change. They just had a bond offering that they put out the other day. They also have like 1,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I'm not sure where it's going to end up as far as Fold's valuation, but even if that was true, um, from then to now, I mean, that's like a 30 markup, 30x money, right? And that doesn't include some things with some dilution and all this other stuff. But, back of the envelope math, it's a 30x return from October 2020 to now. Thinking in terms of Bitcoin, Bitcoin is, a 10x return if we're sitting at 100,000. So it is very possible for investments to outperform the price of Bitcoin. But it's also possible for these other investments to go to zero, which I've also experienced. And that's not fun, to be like the guy in the Monopoly game with the pockets pulled out. And that's kind of the end of it, right? So that's kind of the risk, that at this point in time, I mean, it's pretty safe to say Bitcoin's not going to zero. I mean, I feel pretty comfortable saying that. But that's the risk, right? Is a lot of the, and you have to put those against the winners, right? I mean, you have to but it's funny though, because venture capital is an industry. Venture capital and the entertainment industry are the two places where you can have a 90% failure rate and still be like wildly successful and celebrated as an expert. I mean, as far as record labels and major labels go, I mean, the one pop star pays for the whole damn thing, for everything else. And it's like that in VC as well. I mean, we don't have 9 out of 10 going to zero, but statistically, whether you're investing in flying cars or anything else, a lot of them go to zero, and the ones that don't, I mean, hold on.
Yeah, the one winner pays for the rest, right? That's an interesting part of VC or venture capital. I think another part that I see as well here is that, like, by investing in Fold, you're helping build out an ecosystem around Bitcoin. By just holding Bitcoin, maybe you're doing a little bit less for the network, right? Like, how many people have Fold onboarded to the idea of Bitcoin, right? Maybe they're just like, oh, well, I can get this card, I can get some rewards. I don't really know what Bitcoin is, but they pay me in Bitcoin when I use it. And now Bitcoin seems to go up, and then it draws people into the rabbit hole. Like, how much has the network effect of these businesses been something that you've been like interested in growing too, like as an angel investor? I feel like that's kind of another benefit of doing these investments.
Yeah, so that's definitely a nice indirect benefit, is that by investing in these companies and supporting them. And by the way, even if you invest, $1,000 in a company, and you get an investor update and they say that they're looking for, a marketing person or something, and you happen to know somebody who's perfect for that job, just by interacting and being proactive in one way or another, you're influencing it. And if you send an email to a very late stage private, I don't know, I'm just trying to think of one that's about to go public, Klarna. You know what I mean? Pick some $12 billion company, Instacart, whatever, and try to see how much impact and meaningful thing you can get there. And with a lot of these early stage things, especially the Bitcoin ones, they will absolutely listen to you. They'll absolutely listen when you report something, or, hey, this is a little bit confusing in the app. Why don't you make it change like this when you click on it? And they just appreciate it. And that's kind of a big part of the fun for early stage investing, is that you do get to be more impactful with a lot of the company. Um, and this it's not charity, right? I mean, number one, it is nice to be able to support the ecosystem and to do other things, and there's definitely an effect there. But you're certainly here to make money. I mean, you're certainly investing in these companies because, like what happened with the internet and computers, the personal computers in like the late 90s, mid to late 90s, if we're right about Bitcoin, that's going to happen here is going to be nuts. Okay. I mean, anyone that's building on around with Bitcoin, when Bitcoin does what we all know that's going to happen, you're right there. So that's kind of the thesis for what we're investing in. So yeah, it's not a geyser, also a portfolio company. Love Nick and Stelios, awesome, right? This isn't about funding your board game or funding your education initiative in Zanzibar, or whatever you're doing, right? And getting that type of Patreon type of support. It's more like you're doing this to ultimately profit. And by the way, you can profit and help the industry. So anyone who's like, I don't know, maybe Brad Mills is like, yeah, I just want to see Bitcoin go up, and it's just kind of doing it for that. But trust me, he wants to make money too. All right. I mean, he's not Santa Claus.
Yeah, for sure. It's just a knock-on effect. Of course, the first priority would be to make money back for the investors. That makes a lot of sense. Can you tell me a little bit about what Thunder Funder is? How is it different than Lightning Ventures, and what is it?
Yeah, Thunder. Okay, so it's really ridiculous, but there is this accredited investor hurdle that we have here in the US, which there's rumors that Trump is and some people are actually thinking about changing. It is the biggest scam ever, which is that you are allowed to lose all of your money on a hand of blackjack, but you could not possibly invest $1,000 and start 9 computers because you are way not sophisticated enough to invest in Swan or Strike or any private company. Okay. You can go to the racetrack and ruin your whole life on one trip around with the horses. Okay, that is completely permitted, and actually, businesses kind of rely on you losing. I mean, that's like the part of their business model is you losing. And in VC, when you lose that money, no one wins and no one's happy. And if you are investing, I like to say it's like if you're the last $1,000 into like an oversubscribed deal, that is the perfect place to try and be as an early angel investor. Okay. Because this company is raising $2 million and they've got, fancy VC1 in for $1 million, fancy VC2s in for 500, fancy VC3s in for 300,000, this fancy angels in for, and that little last $100,000 slice of that overall pie, you can get $1,000 in on the same terms as those people. Okay. If this thing goes to zero, it's bad for everyone. It's bad for the fancy VCs that got 1 million people that they have to answer to. It's bad for all the investors that are in their fund. It's bad for the company. It's bad for everyone. Okay. And you losing at the track, it's not even the same. You can't even compare with it. And it's sad that that is the rule. So, the investor, how you qualify for it, it's a self accreditation process, which is a whole nother little SEC thing. You don't have to prove it, but you have to click a button that says, yeah, this is true. The don't ask, don't tell. So I always like to joke, everyone's accredited if they click the right button. So, but it's not for everyone because that's the way it goes. So what is for everyone? What is for everyone is a fairly novel um, in the US at least, it's called regulation crowdfunding, Reg CF funding, which came out of the Jobs Act under Barack Obama. It's the Jumpstart Our Small Business, something like that. And it allowed for private companies to raise from unaccredited investors, which was also prohibited back then. And it allowed for those individual investors under this new funding vehicle to be able to invest with all these kind of new regulations on what they can do. So this kind of opened the door a little bit to Aunt Mary and Uncle Bob and Muzz and Forrest investing $1,000 into the hot new electric scooter startup or whatever was going on at the time. So that was kind of where it started. So there's a lot of other regulations and things, but this kind of was the first crack in the system. So to get that license, it's a bitch, to be quite honest with you. But that's what we did. So, I've been trying to figure out a way to do this for a few years. I've been wanting to launch a crowdfunding portal that's dedicated to Bitcoin startups or Bitcoin and open source startups, okay, which is incredibly niche compared to the others that are out there that kind of do a broad everything generalist. And that's what we did. So we got the license, announced it at Nashville at Bitcoin 24, and here we are. So we have the Lightning Ventures side of things, which is for the accredited investors and everything else. Thunder Funder is for everyone, right? And both of them are different and are for in different places. And I would love to see them come together, but it's going to require maybe a series of some FINRA amendments and some other things to really make that happen and be kosher, so to speak. But that's where it's at for right now. So yeah, super exciting. And you can sign up at thunderfunder.com. We have one live deal right now for Jolts, who's basically leading with Taproot assets and stable coins on Lightning and all these interesting things if you're into that. And I think we're launching Orange Pill app on Thunder Funder here, maybe Monday of next week. So that'll be interesting, but it's fun. And we do not have the Bitcoin integration done just yet, which is unfortunate. We thought we were going to be able to do that, but you're dealing with FINRA and you're dealing with a lot of other things, and some of the laws are we're just navigating it, right? But to be able to open your Strike wallet, invest $1,000 in Bitcoin, okay, on Thunder Funder, and invest in Strike is definitely still the dream and vision. I'm using them as an example, but that's still what we would like to do. But right now, it's still fiat with credit cards, debit cards, ACH, whatever. So we'll see.
Yeah, eventually. So when you say crowdfunding, it isn't like, a Kickstarter campaign where they're giving away t-shirts or something like that. If you're an investor, it's the same idea, right? It's you're getting some exposure to the business itself, and like the idea is to make money from the investment. Is that correct?
Yeah, so good question. And the word crowdfunding gets all kinds of jumbled up with all these other things, right? This lady's got a GoFundMe for her daughter or whatever, and this guy's got a Patreon and he's a creator, and this person's doing all these all these other things. So they kind of you could make it, you could say equity crowdfunding, which equity crowdfunding is that it's specific. You're getting equity. It's an investing. It's not like Crowd Health, where they have a health insurance plan that operates on a crowdfunding type of model. But that word, and maybe it's by design, right? Maybe they did this on purpose because they don't want too many people doing it. But it is a confusing thing, right? Because you hear crowdfunding, you think, I don't want to. I'm not donating any money to anyone for anything. But yeah, it's equity crowdfunding. Sometimes they also call it a community round. So when it's really powerful is like, Substack. Substack just did a real big offering to allow all their fans and people who love Substack to actually invest in the company. So, when you have a really broad reach and you're a big company and you want to, kind of give your customers a chance to own a piece of what you're doing and really solidify them, they have a little bit of ownership in what you're doing. It's really powerful, and you can still communicate with them afterwards. And maybe you don't send the same updates that you send to your lead VCs that you do to the people that invested through that vehicle, but still they're like a part with you, and they're like really further aligned with your success. And it's definitely powerful.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to have this other version of funding for early stage that just isn't available because of the regulations, right? So this is kind of a little bit of a workaround so people can, the general public maybe could get involved in these companies that could be, the next Uber, the next whatever, right? Like that's kind of the idea here. I think it's awesome. I think it's great that you have both of these systems of investing in Bitcoin companies. Yeah, it's awesome what you're doing. To be honest, it's really cool.
And like a few other things. So like when you lose on that spin of the roulette wheel, you don't get to like write that off on your taxes. So there are some other benefits that do come from the things that might not work out. Um, written again off against the winners there. And not only that, but the Reg CF, there's a lot of other kind of weird things that you can raise under that. So like for example, YouTube channels. Okay, creators, not in a GoFundMe way, but you could do an actual raise where it would, maybe you gave away what's called like an RSU, like a revenue sharing unit. Okay. If your YouTube channel, I'm sure it does, makes $1 million a year. Okay. And you wanted to bring on some investors from the people who love and watch your show, you could offer them something. And then at the end of the year, make, distributions and actually do that in a compliant legal way. So we're seeing some stuff like that. I'm talking about in normie land, right? Because now I have this license and I want to be creative and nimble about what we can do. Or something like the BlockStream mining node, which was a huge success and wasn't available in the US. US people could not invest in it. So to be able to take something like a mining site contract, hash power thing, and be able to offer it to unaccredited investors on a platform like Thunder Funder, and be able to pay those dividends in Bitcoin, okay, which is even more fun. We have the ability to do this. It's just a matter of doing it now.
I got to get my YouTube channel on there. That sounds great. That's a really cool idea. So just a couple of questions here before we wrap up, Muzz. What do you see as some of the more exciting things happening in Bitcoin right now, and some things in the future that you hope to happen with Bitcoin?
So the companies and things that I'm particularly excited about, well, first off, they're the things where people are using Bitcoin and it's not even known to the user that that's what they're doing. So that I really love. I love the fact that like a cross-border payments company that we invested in, they send money from US to India as a remittance. And they're going after Wise and these other companies. But when you go to the site to send money, you're linking your Plaid account, you're sending $500. It shows up in rupees in your relatives instantly. That whole thing is happening with Bitcoin on the back end instantaneously, and there isn't even mention of Bitcoin on the site, because as soon as you put Bitcoin on the site, the person that you're getting, right, the Amazon executive who sends 3K a week home, who wants to try, as soon as they see Bitcoin, they're not having it. You know what I mean? But it enables this to happen. So, I mean, I love stuff like that. Or when we went to Philippines for a conference out there, you think here there's like two QR codes, right? I mean, you pay with Venmo or Cash App or whatever. In the Philippines, there's like 100. Okay, if you're buying like a soda and a bag of chips, there's like 35 QR codes for what you can use. And this company, a Philippines Bitcoin company called Pouch, they are listed there, and nothing about Bitcoin, right? So you're like onboarding the merchants, and it's like, hey, this is a new company. It's called Pouch, and the guy's like, yeah, put it next to the other 34. Like, I don't care, just whatever. And that guy has no idea that it's Bitcoin and pesos lands in his account, and maybe eventually he'll be like, oh, I can save this in Bitcoin. Maybe he figures it out, right? But it's not till after the fact. And honestly, the pre-revenue, pre-product stuff isn't really for us. I know a lot of people, they focus on, I want to be the earliest investor in the first 25K, whether it's just a vision and a white paper and in a whatever. That's not really my style. That's much different. I like to see some revenue. I like to see traction and growth and like a live product. Can still be very early, but like, do you have 200 customers? Did you have 107 last month? You know what I mean? You just start kind of connecting the dots there. I also like a lot of the boring stuff, right? The Bitcoin only exchanges kind of all over the world. I know it's not that exciting, but we've invested in a ton of them. Whether it's BIPA in Brazil or Amber in Australia, or Beaver Bitcoin in Canada, or few in Europe. So I like that business, and kind of all of those businesses are having like record months right now. They're all doing great. They were having record months before it was, really the bull. So I like that stuff, but it's not really like bleeding edge, the most important. I'm super excited about it. Some of the things that we don't really invest in, I mean, number one, investing in movies or things like that. That's like much better for a geyser or other people, other things like that. That's not really like a VC investable business. The other things that I think are awesome and are going to have to be funded somehow, but it's not really for me, is like, node management tools, like obscure node liquidity balancing, auto balancing, lightning node channels type of things. That's not really for me. I wish I was cool enough for stuff like that. But really, really spin the wheel and get Bitcoin back. Bitcoin back when you shop online, earning Bitcoin in your browser, like one of my favorite companies, Slice. Really cool way to just earn Bitcoin, stacking in your browser. And stuff like that. That's definitely much more for me. We invested in foundation devices as far as hardware wallets go. So, Breeze, the future, right? What happens if Uber adds Lightning and adds Bitcoin? What are they going to do? Are they going to build it or buy it? These type of things. So that's really what I'm focused on and excited about. And there's just so much going on in Bitcoin land, man. It's hard to keep up.
I got one more question for you, but before I ask that, where can people find you and Thunder Funder and Lightning Ventures? Just where would you like to direct the viewers? And I'll make sure to put the links in the description as well of the show.
Sure. So ltng.ventures, that's Lightning Ventures site. We're working on something really that's going to be brand new in the coming months, and it's going to be a full service platform to invest. We're working on that right now. But if you want to check out a little bit of what we're about, ltng.ventures, you can click on the little apply to invest. Just fill out that form, and then we send you a custom invitation to join our group. It is much easier than trying to just join it on your own. Trust me on that. So we try to get everyone to fill out that form there. Thunder Funder, anyone can sign up. You don't have to be in the US, you can be anywhere. Well, not sanctioned countries, I shouldn't say that. But, and you can get started investing even lower minimums as an unaccredited investor. We're building out profiles. We're building out a messaging system on the platform so you can connect with people. Maybe, Forrest, you made one and you put a link to your podcast and put a few of your superpowers on there, and a way to connect with other people. Still in the very early stages. But yeah, certainly check out thunderfunder.com. And those are pretty much the two ways to keep an eye on what we're working on.
Awesome. Yeah. And did you have anything else you wanted to add in this conversation that we just haven't touched on at all?
don't count out uh, investing. I'd not, instead of buying Bitcoin, right? I would never say to invest in these companies rather than buying Bitcoin. You're going to buy Bitcoin first. We're all going to be buying Bitcoin for the rest of our lives. But there certainly are a lot of great opportunities, and it can be a lot of fun to get started investing. And you just start with small amounts, learn as much as you can, and see where it takes you.
Great note to leave it on. Thanks so much, Muzz. I really appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Awesome, Forrest. You're the man.